The vineyard stretched like a green carpet across Loudoun County, every vine perfectly manicured for Sasha's big day. I should have known I'd be invisible here too, standing in my ill-fitting rental tux, while photographers captured candid moments of the happy family. Monica had orchestrated every detail with the precision of a military campaign, and apparently that included my role as the help. "Leo, darling," she called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness as guests milled around the reception tent. "Could you help Mrs. Patterson find her car? She's had a bit too much champagne." The way she said "darling" made my skin crawl. It was the same tone she used when asking me to take out the trash or explaining why I couldn't bring friends to family dinners. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I guided Mrs. Patterson to her Mercedes, then returned to find Monica directing me toward a stack of champagne trays. "The caterers are overwhelmed," she said, not looking at me. "Make yourself useful." My father, David, stood nearby, adjusting his tie and nodding at something one of Monica's wine country friends was saying. He caught my eye for a split second, and I saw something flicker across his face. Shame, maybe, or recognition, but he looked away, and the moment died. Sasha floated by in her $1,000 dress, posing for Instagram stories with her bridesmaids. When the photographer called for family photos, I started to move toward the group, but Monica's hand landed on my arm like a vice. "Not you," she whispered. "This is for immediate family." I watched from behind a pillar as they arranged themselves in perfect formation, Monica's children flanking the bride, David looking uncomfortable but compliant. The photographer clicked away, capturing their version of happiness. No one mentioned the missing son. Later, as I carried empty glasses to the kitchen tent, Monica cornered me in the service hallway. The mask of gracious hostess had slipped completely. "I'm tired of this," she hissed, her perfectly applied makeup cracking around her eyes. "You sulking around, bringing down the energy. You refuse to help, you won't participate, and frankly, you're making everyone uncomfortable." "I've been helping all day," I said quietly. "I just thought." "You thought what? That you belonged in those photos? That anyone here cares about your feelings?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, but each word landed like a slap. "You're 18 years old, Leo. It's time you learned the truth. You're worthless. You contribute nothing to this family except drama and obligation." The champagne glass in my hand trembled slightly. Around us, the party continued, laughter drifting from the tent, a string quartet playing something elegant and meaningless. Monica smoothed her hair and prepared to return to her guests, leaving me standing there with her words echoing in my head. I set the glass down on a nearby table and walked toward the parking area. My rental car keys felt heavy in my pocket. Behind me, the party sparkled on without missing a beat, and I realized that was exactly the point. I'd been invisible so long that leaving wouldn't even register. I threw my suit jacket over a vineyard railing and pulled out my phone. My fingers found Aunt Yvonne's number. "I'm done," I texted. "I'm leaving." Her response came immediately. "About time, Mijo. Your mom would be proud." The bus to New York smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, but it felt like freedom. I'd packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags, some clothes, my toolkit from high school theater, and my mother's Prism suncatcher wrapped carefully in an old t-shirt. Aunt Yvonne had given me Rico Mendoza's number, a friend of a friend who might have work. Rico's apartment sat above a bodega in Queens, reached by a staircase that creaked ominously with each step. He answered the door in paint-stained coveralls, looking me up and down with the expression of someone who'd seen too many desperate kids show up on his doorstep. "Yvonne says you know lights," he said without preamble. "I did some stuff in high school, theater lighting mostly." "High school?" He laughed, but not unkindly. "Well, we all start somewhere. You can crash on the sofa for a week, but after that you either prove you're worth keeping around, or you find somewhere else to sleep. Fair?" The sofa was a lumpy disaster that had seen better decades, but it was mine. That first week, I followed Rico to load-ins across Brooklyn and Queens, community centers, small venues, the occasional warehouse party. I carried cable, learned to wrap it properly, and discovered that there was an entire ecosystem of people who made magic happen in dark rooms. My first real test came at a gallery opening in Bushwick. The lighting designer, a woman named Carmen with silver hair and forearms like a longshoreman, handed me a coil of cable and pointed to a fixture hanging 20 feet up. "Get that connected to channel 12, she said, "and don't electrocute yourself. I hate paperwork." I climbed the ladder, my hands shaking slightly as I made the connection. The fixture was an old PAR can, probably older than me, but when I powered it up and the warm amber light spilled across the white gallery wall, something clicked into place. This was language I understood: color and shadow, intensity and movement. "Not bad," Carmen called from below. "You've got decent hands." Rico started including me on weekend gigs. I learned to read a light plot, to program simple cues, to troubleshoot when things went wrong. And things went wrong constantly in the world of indie events. Power failures, blown fuses, clients who changed their minds at the last minute. But there was something beautiful about the chaos, the way a crew could transform a blank space into something magical, with just lights and determination. Priya appeared on a gig in Red Hook, wheeling in a cart of floral arrangements for some art collector's birthday party. She had short black hair and eyes that missed nothing, and when she caught me staring at her work, she grinned. "First time seeing flowers that cost more than your rent?" she asked. "First time seeing flowers arranged by someone who actually knows what they're doing," I replied, surprising myself with the comeback. She laughed. "Stick around, theater boy. You might learn something." The charity gala was supposed to be simple, a community fundraiser in a Brooklyn event hall, nothing fancy. Local politicians would make speeches, a jazz trio would play, and people would write checks while eating rubber chicken. Rico's crew handled the basic lighting package. Some uplights around the perimeter, a couple spotlights for the stage, nothing complicated. Then, 20 minutes before showtime, the main lighting board died with a shower of sparks and the smell of burning electronics. "Jesus Christ," muttered Carmen, staring at the smoking console. "This thing's older than dirt. I should have known." Panic rippled through the venue. The event coordinator, a nervous woman in a power suit, kept checking her watch and muttering about donors and schedules. The jazz trio stood on the darkened stage looking lost. I found myself studying the situation with an odd calm. The emergency lighting gave us basic visibility, but the stage was a black hole. We had 4 uplights on dimmers, a fog machine, and a collection of spare PAR cans sitting in road cases. "What if we skip the board?" I said to Rico. "Go analog." He raised an eyebrow. "Analog how?" "Manual dimmers. I can run the spot from backstage, you handle the uplights from the floor. It won't be pretty, but it'll work." Rico looked skeptical, but Carmen was already nodding. "The kid's right. We can make it work if we keep it simple." Mr. Alvarez, the venue superintendent, appeared with a toolbox and a knowing smile. "You need some help, Mijo? I used to work the old theater district back in the day." Together, we jury-rigged a system that would have horrified any proper lighting designer. Mr. Alvarez found us some ancient manual dimmers in the basement. I strung cable and focused the spots by hand. Rico positioned the uplights to create pools of colored light around the room. When the jazz trio finally took the stage, I brought up the main spot slowly, and warm white light spilled across the performers. The audience, which had been growing restless in the dim room, suddenly quieted. As the music began, I started adding color, soft blues and ambers that painted the walls and ceiling. It wasn't sophisticated, but it was alive. The light moved with the music, responding to the energy in the room. I found myself thinking about my mother's prism suncatcher, the way it scattered rainbows across my childhood bedroom wall, and I started playing with the fog machine, creating layers of atmosphere that made the simple lights seem magical. Marcel Cho, a lifestyle vlogger I'd noticed filming the event, had his phone out and was recording my improvised light show. When the jazz trio finished their set to enthusiastic applause, he approached me with excitement written all over his face. "Dude, that was incredible," he said. "You just saved this whole event. Mind if I get your name? I want to tag you when I post this." "Leo Rodriguez," I said, still a little stunned by what we'd pulled off. "Leo Rodriguez," he repeated, typing into his phone. "The guy who saved the show." Marcel's video went live the next morning with the caption, "When the lights died at last night's gala, this kid Leo Rodriguez stepped up and created pure magic with basically nothing. This is what real artists look like." By noon, it had 5,000 views. By evening, 15,000. My phone started buzzing with DMs and notifications. Local theater groups wanted to know if I was available for hire. A few small event planners reached out about upcoming projects. It was surreal. After years of being invisible, suddenly people were actively looking for me. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Rico found me staring at my phone screen with a mixture of excitement and terror. "So," he said, settling into his recliner with a beer, "looks like you're not just crew anymore." "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "Last week I was sleeping on your couch and carrying cable. Now people want to pay me to design lights?" "Everyone starts somewhere," he said. "Question is, you gonna let fear talk you out of it, or you gonna see where this goes?" The first real booking came from a community theater in Astoria, a production of Our Town, with a budget that barely covered coffee, but they needed someone who could work miracles with minimal equipment. I spent 3 days in their basement theater, programming cues on an ancient etc. board, and trying to create the feeling of small-town America, with 8 conventional fixtures and a lot of imagination. Opening night, I stood in the back of the house and watched the lights I'd designed support the story unfolding on stage. When the final blackout came and the audience erupted in applause, I felt something I'd never experienced before, the deep satisfaction of creating something that mattered. Rico insisted we celebrate at B&H Photo, where he helped me pick out my first piece of real equipment, a small DMX controller that would let me program shows on my laptop. It wasn't much, but it was mine. "Now you're dangerous," he said as we loaded it into his van. Priya met us for dinner in Flushing, and I found myself telling her about the community theater gig, about the feeling of watching actors perform under lights I'd created. She listened with the kind of attention I wasn't used to, asking questions that showed she understood the artistic side of what I was doing. "You know what I love about your work," she said as we shared lo mein and tried not to get sauce on Rico's new lighting controller. "It's not trying to impress anyone. It just serves the story." Later, as we walked back to Rico's apartment, an email notification popped up on my phone from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line made my stomach drop. "Urgent lighting design needed. High-profile wedding." The email was professionally written, but desperate. A boutique events company was in crisis. Their lighting designer had bailed on a high-profile wedding with less than a week's notice. They needed someone who could handle an upscale Manhattan venue, work with a demanding client, and deliver a sophisticated design on an impossible timeline. The pay they were offering was more than I'd made in the past 6 months combined. I was about to delete it when something about the event details caught my eye. The venue was mentioned, a luxury hotel in Manhattan. The client was described as a prominent Virginia events planner expanding into the New York market. Virginia events planner. My chest tightened with recognition. I called Rico immediately. "I think Monica's company just tried to hire me." "Your evil stepmother Monica?" "She doesn't know it's me. They went through some booking agency, probably found my name from Marcel's video." "But Rico, this could be it. This could be my chance to show them." There was a long pause. "Show them what exactly?" "That I'm not worthless. That I'm actually good at something." "Leo." Rico's voice was gentle but firm. "You already know you're good at something. You don't need their permission to exist." Priya had similar concerns when I explained the situation over coffee the next morning. Are you sure this is about the work? Because revenge lighting design sounds like a great way to sabotage your career before it really starts. But I'd already made up my mind. I called the booking agency back with my terms. 50% upfront, full creative control, all communication through Rico's LLC, and absolutely no direct contact with the client. If Monica wanted my work, she could have it, but she'd have to pay for it properly. The contract came back signed within hours. Whatever crisis they were dealing with, they were desperate enough to meet my conditions. Okay, Rico said when I showed him the paperwork, but we do this right. Professional, no drama, no gotcha moments. You design a beautiful show, you get paid, you move on. Deal? Deal. That night, I started sketching ideas for what would become the most important lighting design of my life. Rico's warehouse became my studio for the next week. Under the soft glow of work lights, Priya and I spread out design drawings, color samples, and equipment specs across every available surface. The concept was ambitious, a living canopy of lights and flowers that would transform the hotel ballroom into something between a garden and a constellation. Tell me again why we're hanging 500 pounds of fixtures and foliage from a ceiling that wasn't designed for it, Priya asked, adjusting a floral mock-up. Because, I said, fine-tuning the color temperature on a test rig, it's going to be beautiful, and because they're paying us enough to do it right. The technical challenges were significant. Each floral cluster would house LED fixtures that could shift from warm amber to cool blue, creating the effect of daylight moving through leaves. The programming alone would take days. Hundreds of individual cues timed to create subtle movements of light and shadow. 3 days into prep, one of Rico's crew members mentioned that he'd worked with the event planner before. Sasha something, he said. Real particular about everything being perfect for social media. My hand stopped moving on the lighting console. Sasha. My stepsister Sasha was the event planner. You okay? Priya asked, noticing my sudden stillness. Fine, I lied. Just working through some programming issues. But that night, alone on Rico's couch, the old doubts crept back in. What if this was a mistake? What if Monica discovered who I was and sabotaged everything? What if the show wasn't good enough to prove whatever I was trying to prove? My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Yvonne. Package coming your way. Something your mama wanted you to have. The box arrived the next morning, small and carefully wrapped. Inside, nested in tissue paper, was my mother's prism sun catcher, the one that had hung in her hospital room window during her final weeks, casting tiny rainbows across the white walls even on the darkest days. Attached was a note in Aunt Yvonne's careful handwriting. She always said you had her eye for light and color. You shine brightest when you stop asking if you're enough. I held the prism up to the warehouse's industrial windows, and dozens of tiny rainbows danced across the concrete walls. Something settled in my chest, a quiet certainty that had nothing to do with Monica or David or proving anything to anyone. This show wasn't about them. It was about the light. I added one final element to the design. A moment near the end where prisms hidden throughout the floral canopy would scatter rainbow light across the entire room, like my mother's sun catcher magnified 100 times over. That's going to be gorgeous, Priya said, watching me program the new sequence, but also impossible to focus properly. I know, I said. That's what makes it worth doing. Load-in began at 6 a.m. on Friday morning. Rico's van was packed with more gear than we'd ever transported. Conventional fixtures, LED strips, haze machines, and miles of cable. Priya followed in her own vehicle with the floral arrangements, each one carefully designed to house lighting elements without looking like a lighting element. The venue was everything I'd expected: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of hushed luxury that made you lower your voice automatically. The hotel's technical director, a nervous man named Frank, walked us through the rigging points and power distribution with the air of someone who'd seen too many events go wrong. You sure the ceiling can handle the load? He asked for the third time, watching Rico's crew attach mounting hardware to the ballroom's structural beams. We calculated everything twice, I assured him. Rico doesn't take chances with safety. By noon, the basic structure was in place, a network of rigging that would support the living canopy. From the floor, it looked like an industrial skeleton, but I could already see how it would transform once the lights and flowers were in position. That's when Monica walked in. She moved through the ballroom like she owned it, directing a small army of assistants and vendors with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her outfit cost more than most people's rent, and she radiated the kind of authority that made waiters nervous. She paused near our work area, surveying the rigging with a critical eye. "This seems very complex," she said to Frank. "Are we sure it's going to look elegant?" The client specifically requested sophisticated, not theatrical. I was 30 feet up on a ladder, focusing a fixture, and she looked right through me. Just another technician in work clothes, invisible and irrelevant. "The designer has an excellent reputation," Frank said diplomatically. "Very artistic eye, from what I understand." "Well, I hope so. This event could make or break our expansion into the New York market." Monica's voice carried the weight of someone with everything riding on one night. Everything has to be perfect. I finished focusing the fixture and climbed down, keeping my head low and my movements professional. The irony wasn't lost on me. Monica was paying for my work while looking right through me, just like always. Around 3 p.m., as we were installing the floral elements, Sasha appeared. She'd grown more polished since the vineyard wedding, her style evolution clearly influenced by Monica's brand-conscious aesthetic. She was checking details on her phone when she glanced up at our work area. Our eyes met across the ballroom, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit. "Leo," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I set down the fixture I was holding and walked over to her. Up close, she looked older, more tired than her Instagram photos suggested. "Hello, Sasha. Are you—" She gestured helplessly at the equipment surrounding us. "I'm the lighting designer," I said simply. "I'll be out of your way before the guests arrive." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "But when did you—" "I've been working in New York for a while now. Event lighting, mostly." Monica appeared at Sasha's elbow, still focused on her clipboard. "Darling, the florist needs to discuss the centerpiece adjustments." She looked up and saw me. For a split second, something flickered in her expression. Confusion, maybe recognition trying to surface. But then it was gone. "Is there a problem?" she asked Sasha. "No," Sasha said quickly. "No problem. The lighting looks very professional." Monica barely glanced at me. "Good. We don't have time for issues." They walked away, leaving me standing in the growing garden of lights we'd created. Rico appeared at my shoulder. "That her?" "That's her." "She doesn't recognize you." "No," I said, and realized I was relieved rather than hurt. "She doesn't." By 6 p.m., the installation was complete. The ballroom had been transformed into something that existed somewhere between nature and dream. Hundreds of points of light nestled among living flowers, creating depth and movement that would shift throughout the evening. The prism elements were hidden so subtly that even I had trouble spotting them from the floor. "You ready for this?" Rico asked as we packed up our tools. I looked around the space one more time, checking sight lines and making mental notes for the evening's operation. The light board was programmed, the cues were tested, and everything was ready. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." We left through the service entrance as the first guests began arriving in the hotel lobby. I wouldn't need to be there for the show. Everything was automated, timed to music cues that Sasha's team would trigger remotely. But as we loaded the van, I could hear the string quartet beginning their first set, and I knew that upstairs, in a room full of people who'd never bothered to see me, my lights were beginning to bloom. I wasn't there to see it happen, but Priya was. She'd volunteered to stay behind for the first hour, ostensibly to handle any technical issues, but really because she wanted to see the show we'd built together. She positioned herself in the service corridor with a sightline into the ballroom, her phone ready to document everything. The ceremony began simply, guests in their elegant attire, the bride and groom taking their positions under the floral canopy. The initial lighting was soft and warm, creating an intimate atmosphere that made even the grand ballroom feel personal. Then, as the processional music swelled, the first transformation began. The LEDs hidden throughout the flowers started their slow dance from warm amber to cool daylight, creating the illusion of time passing, of seasons changing. The effect was subtle at first, a gentle shift that most guests probably noticed only subconsciously. But as the ceremony progressed, the lighting grew more complex, more alive. During the exchange of vows, when the bride spoke about growing together through all seasons, the lights responded with a cascade of color that moved like wind through leaves. It wasn't programmed to sync with specific words. I'd designed it to feel organic, unpredictable, like real light filtering through a real garden. The moment I'd been most worried about came near the end of the ceremony. The music reached its crescendo, and hidden throughout the canopy, dozens of small prisms began to catch and scatter the LED light, sending rainbow fragments dancing across the walls and ceiling of the ballroom. According to Priya, the effect was breathtaking. The entire room seemed to come alive with color and movement, as if the ceiling had opened to reveal a sky full of light. Several guests gasped audibly. The bride, not Sasha, but her client, had tears streaming down her face. It was like watching magic happen in real time, Priya texted me later that night. Even the cynical photographer put down his camera just to watch. But perhaps the most telling moment came during the reception, when Monica took the stage to thank the vendors and acknowledge the team that had made the evening possible. "The lighting design tonight was provided by Rodriguez Lightworks," she said, reading from her notes without really processing the words. "We're grateful for their artistic vision." According to Priya, Sasha was standing near the stage when Monica made the announcement, and the look on her face was complicated: recognition, confusion, and something that might have been respect. After the formal program ended, Sasha approached Priya during the dancing portion of the evening. "The lighting designer," she said carefully, "Leo Rodriguez. Is he my stepbrother?" Priya, who'd heard the whole story by then, just smiled. "You'd have to ask him yourself." But Sasha didn't ask. Instead, she spent the rest of the evening watching the lights change and shift above the dance floor, seeing for perhaps the first time the artistry that had been right in front of her family all along. The event was a complete success. Monica's expansion into the New York market was secured, the bride and groom were thrilled, and the photos that flooded social media showed a wedding that looked like something from a fairy tale. I got the news from Rico, who'd received a call from the booking agency. "They want to know if you're available for 3 more events this month," he said. "Word's getting around about what you did last night." And Monica? Still doesn't know, probably won't ever know, unless someone tells her directly. I was sitting on the fire escape outside my new apartment. I had finally been able to afford my own place in Astoria, watching the sunset over Queens. My phone buzzed with a message request from an unknown number. The message was brief. "I saw your name on the invoice. I hope you're okay." "Dad." I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. "I'm good. Thanks for asking." His reply came immediately. "Could we talk? Just once?" I agreed to one phone call, scheduled for the following Sunday afternoon. I wasn't sure what I expected. An apology, an explanation, or just more of the same awkward distance that had defined our relationship since Monica entered our lives. David's voice was smaller than I remembered, tentative in a way that surprised me. "I saw the pictures," he said after we'd exchanged awkward hellos. "From the wedding. Monica showed me some of the social media posts. The lighting was beautiful, Leo." "Thank you." A long pause. "I didn't know you were still doing that, the lighting stuff. I thought after high school." "You thought I'd given up on it because no one in the family thought it was worth supporting?" Another pause, longer this time. "I know I messed up. After your mother died, I couldn't handle conflict. Monica was so sure about everything, so confident, and I was barely keeping my head above water. It was easier to let her make the decisions." "Easier for who?" "For me," he admitted, "and I know that was wrong. I know I let you down." I looked out at the New York skyline, thinking about the 18-year-old who'd left Virginia with nothing but anger and a suitcase full of dreams. That kid had needed to hear this conversation so badly. But the person I'd become, the person who'd just lit a Manhattan ballroom and made strangers weep with the beauty of it, didn't need his father's validation anymore. "I appreciate you saying that," I said finally, "but I need you to know that I'm okay. I built something here. I have people who care about me, work that matters to me. I'm not the lost kid who left your house 2 years ago." "I can see that. The business, your reputation. Rico spoke very highly of you when I called his shop." "You called Rico?" "I wanted to understand what you'd built, what I'd missed." His voice was quiet. "I'm proud of you, son. I know I don't have the right to say that anymore, but I am." The words hit differently than I'd expected. Not the desperate relief I might have felt at 18, but a quiet sadness for all the time we'd lost. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "But if you do, you won't see me the same way. I'm not going to make myself smaller to fit into Monica's idea of family, and I'm not going to pretend that what happened didn't happen. I understand." "Do you?" Because Monica still doesn't know who designed that wedding. She took credit for finding, quote, Rodriguez Lightworks, without ever connecting it to the stepson she called worthless. That tells me everything I need to know about how invisible I was in that house. David was quiet for a long time. "What can I do?" he asked finally. "Nothing," I said, and realized I meant it. "There's nothing to fix anymore, Dad. I'm good." Quote, After we hung up, I sat on my fire escape for another hour, watching the city light up as darkness fell. My phone buzzed with texts from Priya asking how the call had gone, from Rico checking if I was okay, from Aunt Yvonne sending pictures of the tamales she was making for dinner. These were my people now. This was my family. 6 months later, Priya and I were installing a permanent light sculpture at a community arts center in Brooklyn. The commission had come through Marcel, whose original video of my gala save had led to bigger opportunities, which had led to this, a living canopy of lights and plants that would provide year-round beauty for a space that served underserved artists and their families. "Hand me that blue gel," Priya said from her position on the ladder, adjusting one of the flowering vines we'd trained around the light fixtures. "It's cyan," I corrected, passing her the color filter. "It's blue, you pretentious lighting nerd." "It's cyan, you stubborn flower girl." We'd had this argument a dozen times, and it never got old. The commission had given us the chance to really collaborate, combining her eye for living design with my understanding of how light could transform space. The result was something neither of us could have created alone. The Arts Center's director, a woman named Carmen who'd fought city bureaucracy for 3 years to make this project happen, watched us work with the satisfaction of someone seeing a dream become reality. "The kids are going to love this," she said, testing one of the interactive elements we'd built in, touch sensors that would trigger gentle color changes in response to movement beneath the canopy. "That's the idea," I said, programming the final sequences into the control system. "Art shouldn't be something you just look at. It should be something you can be part of." My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram, another event company wanting to book Rodriguez Lightworks for a corporate gala. The business had grown faster than I'd ever imagined, and I was finally able to be selective about projects, choosing work that excited me rather than just paying bills. Rico had helped me incorporate properly, and we'd moved the operation into a proper studio space in Long Island City. I was even hiring my own crew now, mostly kids like I'd been, looking for a chance to prove themselves in the chaotic world of live events. "You know what I love about this?" Priya said, climbing down from the ladder to survey our work. "It's not trying to impress anyone. It just makes the space more beautiful." "That's the highest compliment you can give," I replied, thinking about all the lessons I'd learned since that night at the vineyard wedding, about the difference between showing off and showing up, between proving your worth and simply being worthy. Aunt Yvonne arrived just as we were finishing the final adjustments, carrying a cooler full of her homemade tamales and enough tamarind soda to feed a small army. She'd driven up from Arlington to see the installation, and the pride in her eyes was worth more than any review or social media mention. "Your mama would be so proud," she said, pulling me into one of her fierce hugs, "not just of what you built, but of who you became." As the sun set behind the Brooklyn skyline, we tested the evening sequence, warm amber light gradually shifting to cooler tones, creating the effect of daylight moving through leaves. Hidden throughout the canopy, small prisms caught and scattered the LED light, sending rainbow fragments dancing across the community center's walls. Children from the after-school program had gathered to watch, their faces lit up with wonder as the colors played across the ceiling. One little girl reached up toward the lights, and the touch sensors responded with a gentle wave of blue that followed her movement across the room. "It's like magic," she whispered to her friend. "Better than magic," I said quietly to Priya. "It's real." My phone buzzed with another notification, this time a text from an unknown number. The message was brief. "Saw the article about your arts center project. It's beautiful. Sasha." I showed the text to Priya, who raised an eyebrow. "You gonna respond?" "Maybe," I said, "but not tonight." Tonight was for this, for the light we'd built together, for the children playing beneath our electronic canopy, for the quiet satisfaction of work that mattered. Tomorrow I'd deal with the ghosts from Virginia, with family members who were finally beginning to see me as something other than worthless. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, surrounded by the family I'd chosen and the light I'd learned to make with my own hands. Above us, the canopy glowed with soft, shifting colors, and the children danced beneath it like they were standing under a sky full of stars. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.